What if gold is replaced by the US dollar as the reserve standard? In this paper, our emerging markets bonds team values gold by matching central bank money liabilities to gold reserves, implying a 39,000 to a 184,000 per ounce metric. If they use central bank MO, which is just money liabilities divided by gold reserves, $39,000. And this is Van Eck fund. This isn't my number. If you take the M2 money supply, and that is what I think is probably a better designation, $184,000 gold. And again, this is Van Eck saying if this were to happen, this is what you would be looking at. I'm not saying it's going to happen. All I'm saying is, and if you took M1, it's probably closer to $24,000, and that's James Rickards' number. And it's ironic, too. Do you know that in almost every central bank balance sheet, gold is held in what is called the gold revaluation account?
Van Eck's emerging markets team has released a startling valuation model that reimagines the global financial landscape, projecting that gold could skyrocket if it were to replace the US dollar as the reserve currency fully. Andy Schectman, president of Miles Franklin Preciousmetals, emphasizes the gravity of these numbers, noting that matching gold reserves to the M2 money supply implies a staggering $184,000 per ounce. He further breaks down that even a conservative valuation based on central bank liabilities, MO, yields $39,000, while James Rickards M1-based model points to $24,000. Schectman warns that this isn't merely theoretical, as central banks already maintain gold revaluation accounts on their balance sheets, dormant mechanisms specifically designed to absorb such a massive upward repricing to solventize the system. Now, we present the clips from Andy Schectman's interview. Before we continue to discuss this, please subscribe to our channel and activate the bell icon for timely updates. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Judy Shelton comes on my show, and she says, Andy, in no uncertain terms, when I was on the transition team, President Trump said to me, July 4th, 2026 is the biggest day of his presidency. It's the 250th anniversary of the country, and he will back the back end of the bond market with gold. Now, why would he do that? I'm going to put it all together for you. Ray Dalio just came out and said 60% of the United States has a literacy rate below the 6th grade. We're uneducated. $38 trillion debt plus $180 trillion in unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions. You know how long ago a trillion seconds was? 31,688 years ago. That's a trillion seconds. We're broke. We're insolvent. We're uneducated. We don't make anything anymore. Where's all our manufacturing? Triffin's dilemma threw it across the globe.
Right.
And guess what's coming around the corner? Mr. AI. That's going to kneecap not only entry-level jobs, they say 50% of them within a few years. My son was an accountant for Price Waterhouse. He works here now. He was analyzing a balance sheet of real estate investment trust, getting paid 80 grand. What do they need him for when an AI can do it like that? All right.
Yeah.
So we're broke, we're insolvent, we're uneducated, and AI is going to hurt us, right? So how do you bring back manufacturing? Triffin's dilemma says, well, you can't if you're the reserve currency. Vice President Vance says we can't be the reserve currency anymore. So what do? They create the Stablecoin Act, suppress front short-term interest rates to create volume in loans and whatnot. All of the proceeds go into gold, pushing the price higher, 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 higher. The dollar goes lower, 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 lower. We can pay off our debt. We can sell manufacturing to the world. How do we get the manufacturing back? Judy Shelton says we'll peg a 5, 10, 20, 30, and even a 50-year bond. All of them except the 30 and the 50, zero coupon, zero interest rate, redeemability in gold. The more stupid you are with fiscal policy, the higher the price of gold goes. But that's what they want because that devalues the dollar. James Rickards has been talking about, I think he said $24,000 an ounce gold. But there was just a report that was done by, I think I have it. Oh, geez, I should have had this sitting out there. Here it is right here. So there was a report done by Van Eck funds, and it's titled, If the Dollar Loses Reserve Status, ironically enough. I read it just the other day. It says, what if gold is replaced, blah, blah, blah. And it says, I'll just read what it says real here. What if gold is replaced by the US dollar as the reserve standard? In this paper, our emerging markets bonds team values gold by matching central bank money liabilities to gold reserves, implying a 39,000 to a 184,000 per ounce metric. If they use central bank MO, which is just money liabilities divided by gold reserves, $39,000. And this is Van Eck fund. This isn't my number. If you take the M2 money supply, and that is what I think is probably a better designation, $184,000 gold. And again, this is Van Eck saying if this were to happen, this is what you would be looking at. I'm not saying it's going to happen. All I'm saying is, and if you took M1, it's probably closer to $24,000, and that's James Rickards' number. And it's ironic too. Do you know that in almost every central bank balance sheet, gold is held in what is called the gold revaluation account? Now, could they just revalue it? Sure, why not? Roosevelt did it in 33 and Nixon did it in 72 and 73. The gold window was shut at $35 an ounce in 71. He made it 38 in 72, which devalues a dollar, and made it 42.22 in 73, devalues a dollar, where it stayed on the books until today at 42.22. Even if he marked it to market, he could do so because every $4,000 increase in the price of gold gives the Treasury Department $1 trillion free and clear. So you put gold at $184,000, you've just filled the Treasury with reserves that they could pay off the debt, start doing things. In other words, I think they realize it. Look, the head of the Bundesbank has been advocating for this, as has the head of the Dutch National Bank. Everyone has gold at absurdly low levels, the way it used to be prior to with the Bretton Woods Agreement. And they all realize that gold is an option to kind of balance the books and get things in order again. And who would it benefit? The majority of the central banks on the planet who've been buying it hand over fist since 2017. But I'll say it again. My mentor, Richard Russell, used to say years ago, the Fed is trapped, either they inflate or they default, which is the path that all central banks have taken. Maybe this is option 3, a soft default on the reserve status to give credibility to the bond market, which is really what's important because there's a waning demand for our treasuries, to bring back manufacturing and just simply say, thanks for the fun, guys. It was a real privilege to keep interest rates low and goods cheap, and that's the benefit of being the world reserve currency, but we've squandered it with our indebtedness, and we're not in a good position financially or in terms of the infrastructure of the country. Are we educated? Do we have savings? What about AI? All this stuff is against us. If we don't throw a Hail Mary, honestly, I think the prospect for the world our kids are growing up in is rather scary. The opportunities are disappearing into a wave of massive efficiency in AI and robotics at the expense of millions of jobs. It has to be done.
The discussion outlines a potential economic reset strategy centered on July 4th, 2026, where the U.S. bond market could be explicitly backed by gold to address national insolvency and restore manufacturing. Facing $38 trillion in debt, massive unfunded liabilities, and the disruptive force of AI, the proposed solution involves a soft default on the dollar's status as a reserve currency. This strategy would theoretically suppress the currency to boost exports while utilizing gold revaluation accounts, dormant on central bank balance sheets, to solventize the treasury. A cited Van Eck report projects gold valuations between $39,000 and $184,000 per ounce if the metal were to fully back monetary liabilities. This massive repricing would technically allow the Treasury to extinguish debt and restore credibility to the bond market. Let's get back to the interview.
The 100 is the big psychological number.
Right.
It almost feels like this is more of a systemic repricing, where it's never been allowed to find its true price discovery, and it is trying to do that. And I think that, this is why maybe late in this cycle that the U.S. government came in and said, no, this is a critical mineral. And I think you're beginning to see that where, the physical demand, taking it off the exchanges, which could lead to some sort of a failure to delivery. Now, I don't want to, there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. So I just want to maybe prod your listeners to Google something, and that is Chris Marcus, who runs Arcadia Economics YouTube channel, Bart Chilton, Chilton podcast, where a few years ago he came out and said and admitted many of these things, and unfortunately passed away under 2 weeks later. But he came out and said Bear Stearns Bear Stearns largely failed because they had the largest short position really in the COMEX and in the history of it at that point. And when silver went to $21, they went bankrupt. And he comes out and said,
$1. Oh my gosh.
he comes out and says this, and he says that they called Jamie Dimon into the office, and when they asked him, Jamie and Ben Bernanke, he says, it was me, Ben Bernanke, and Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary. And they said, Jamie, we need you to take this short position. And Jamie says, okay, guys, but I'll be in violation of position limits. They said, you got like 90 days to clean it up. Now, this is all coming from the head of the CFTC, Bart Chilton,
Right.
and which is like the head of the SEC for but only for commodities. And Jamie says, fine, we'll do that. And off he goes. At the end of the time period, he says, I went into my superiors, which would have been Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, and I said to him that they've increased their position, not shortened it. They're in violation of our agreement, violation of antitrust law. They need to be prosecuted. And he said, I was told, back down, Bart, it's a political decision. Now, he died 2 weeks later or less.
Oh.
I'm not saying there's causation. They said it was cancer. Maybe it's a man cleaning his conscience. All I can tell you is that this stuff happens. And he was told to let them have this massive, wicked short position in silver. It's a political decision. Well, and then later on down the road, when everyone is freaking out about this, there's an investigation, and finally they acquiesce and they hit them for a $920 million fine when their metals desk made $1 billion this year. It's a little slap on the wrist on that year, 3 years ago, but said, yes, you're guilty of spoofing. Everyone in the entire industry who watched it thought they would get RICO charged, but they didn't. Their head trader, Michael Nowak, is still in jail for it. So look, all I'm simply saying is this, is that when will it happen? It will happen when there is a failure to delivery or systemic risk. And when you see a bank like TD Bank betting, and they came out in a publication to all of their investors, all their traders, or all of their investors, or people who trade with them, saying, we're putting on a big short position in silver right now because we think the top is in, and then it goes to 92, and they just got stopped out yesterday, the day before. So yeah, I think that you see something, a failure to deliver, which could then trigger a systemic contagion event. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But that was the whole premise of the Economic Times newsletter or letter that came out last month and said, well, the U.S. banks supposedly had flip-flopped and gone net long, leaving the bank in Canada and those in Europe holding the bag. I wonder if TD is in the bank in Canada that they're talking about, trying to get people to dump their metal, but with a substantial higher premium in Shanghai, about $8 an ounce continuously, over what we're seeing here in the West. That arbitrage is just a vacuum. Every time the price gets dropped, bang, it goes to the East, and it ain't coming back. They're literally enticing any of the sophisticated traders who can buy paper in the West and deliver physical there to do so at a huge profit. And so these are the kind of things that are different that could precipitate a problem. Short of that, I think they'll just become a realization that the biggest money in the world sees silver as critical, indispensable, and that the supply-demand fundamentals just don't line up, whether we see some sort of an event or not. There is no market like a gold bull market. And when I say gold, I mean silver too, because in traditional markets, yeah, you take some of that off and leave your principal ride, and then you end up, buying another asset or something. But with this, it really isn't that way. It reinforces, I think, the fear that people have in what's happening underneath the surface, and so I think, yeah, I don't think it really, I think people expect it. I mean, let's just simply say that some caution is always warranted after a move like we've seen. And when everyone starts talking about something as being a certainty, myself included, that's usually when the market reminds you it doesn't care about your conviction or your theory. But that said, I would separate price risk from thesis risk. And, I guess in the short term, yeah, gold and silver can certainly pull back. And in a thin market like silver, after a vertical move like we saw, Elizabeth, yeah, I would say that an air pocket or a sharp pullback or profit taking, margin increase like we saw, which is a good one to discuss, headline risk, you name it, a $10 or $20 correction in silver is not only possible, it's probably normal in the bull market. But it's the underlying conditions that got us here, which are tight physical availability coupled with massive delivery demand in a paper market that is being asked to settle real world demand in real metal that they may not actually have. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're asking, could these metals drop next week? Of course they could. And I'd actually be surprised if we don't get some sort of frightening pullback along the way. But at the same time, I think that you could argue that dips like this in this market are a gift. Why? Because they're actually driven by positioning and leverage, not by a sudden surplus of metal. And so what I mean by that is that if you look at who's standing for delivery here, right? These are this is the biggest money in the world, who is spending billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. So you get someone with a $20 million position or margin account or money in their account, and they want to start buying metal. You know, they're normally when the CME group raises margin, it knocks the price down hard because you get a lot of people who, let me explain it this way. They raised margin twice in about a 2-week period. The second one was on December 26th, day after Christmas. On Christmas Day, you would have needed 21,000 in your margin account to control a 5,000 ounce silver contract, about 300,000 at the time. Okay, so that's huge leverage, right? Well, the next day, the day after Christmas, they said, now you need $7,000 more approximately. So you need 28,000. And a lot of people got margin called because they may have 30 trades on it margin. They have to sell a bunch to get the margin money back or the money back to cover their margin. And as they sell, it drives the price down higher. So as the price is falling, coupled with an increase in margin, the price really falls. It begets selling, begets more selling. And it's called shaking the trees because you get all those players on margin who fall out, cover their positions for whatever degree they do it. And who comes in to push the price right back up to $92? The big traders that are standing for delivery who do not use margin. They don't care. You're talking the biggest money in the world. Yeah, so what I would simply say is I think it is possible for short-term caution and long-term bullishness to coexist. And I think that's where we are right now. So I wouldn't sell if we see a pullback. In my opinion, my conviction has never been stronger on a long-term basis, but I understand the short-term caution and I agree.
The surge toward the $100 psychological level represents a chaotic, systemic repricing that exposes the fragility of legacy paper markets. Historical testimony from former regulators suggests that massive short positions were often politically mandated to prevent bank failures, creating a long era of artificial price suppression. That control grid is now fracturing as the Shanghai vacuum, an $8 premium over Western prices, relentlessly drains physical inventory from the West. Recent margin hikes by the CME, typically effective at flushing out retail speculators, are failing to halt this momentum because the primary buyers are now unleveraged sovereign entities demanding physical delivery. This divergence confirms that, while volatility is possible, the underlying thesis remains unbreakable. The market is transitioning from paper speculation to a complex asset reality in which a failure to deliver is the ultimate, inevitable risk. Share your thoughts on his analysis in the comment section below. If you find this video informative, please support us by turning on notifications to stay informed about our latest videos. See you in the following video. Thanks for watching.